This is the Author Blurb podcast, where readers and authors connect. We are here for you to learn and discover those authors who are not either large names or as popular as some might find, but they're entertaining, they're fun, and they're enjoyable to listen to in these interviews. So take the time, learn more about them, enjoy the interviews, and remember to go to authorblurb.com where you can find out more about them, about the shows, and other guests that we have. So on Author Blurb today, I'm speaking with Alex Holland, Criminy, I can never get anyone's name right, especially after just saying it. I'm here with Alex Holland. Alex, I'm sorry. For some reason, my tongue died on me. Thank you for being here. I do extremely apologize. And we're here to discuss.
Got a name change coming up.
Yeah, we are here to discuss your book that you have called Primary. And I have a lot of questions, but before I dig too deep into anything, I always find it easier for you to discuss a bit about yourself, a bit about your book. That way, one, we get to know you and get to know your book and then learn more about it both.
Sure. I'm Alex, so thank you for the last name rechange. I appreciate that. My second one, I'll change it up just so people can stay on their toes. I have been a lover of books, movies, video games, all through my young life, into teens, into 20s, consuming a megaton of stuff all through that time. While I was working, I was a builder's labourer, and I had come home from a shift and imagined the whole world turning blue outside my window, and this concept, this idea of colours, kind of stuck with me. So it's stayed with me since I was 15 years old and just nagged at me in the back of my head. And drawing on lots of different places, lots of different ideas, lots of different things that I'd consumed, like I said, I started to form kind of this world, and it started to expand and get bigger and bigger and bigger. I needed to put it down as a concept and as an idea, and like I said, it just kept getting bigger and kept annoying me that it wasn't a reality. So I figured out how to write, figured out how to turn this idea into something, and had to go through the what is the expression? Sitting down and bleeding is writing. That process of how to do it. So yeah, it's been a fun journey just to kind of figure out how to switch that mode from consuming to producing, which has been a bit of a lifelong journey for me, and a fun one though, a really rewarding one.
All right, well, that sounds good. Now, for anybody that's not familiar, you're from Australia.
Correct.
Which is also why some of your phrases might be a little different from what I'm used to. So if I kind of look a little funny, don't think anything of it. It's just taking me a second to process. But it's being down there, you also have a different sense of what stories are. You guys have different types of stories or science fiction you guys get into as well. That, because I've looked at what is produced in other countries just out of curiosity, and your story, I guess here's one thing, like your book is called Primary, and from what I've gathered from it, the main character is 21 years old.
Mm-hmm.
But in the description, it also says that his high school bully is coming after him.
Mm-hmm.
The one question I have is at 21 years old, is he still in high school? Because I was trying to figure out if you guys stay in high school for a longer period, then makes sense or not. What the situation with that is?
Growing up in a small town, the short answer is no. We don't have that kind of extended education, and that may warrant my title description being a bit clearer. Growing up in a small town, the people don't move away,
Right.
so the pain that Kobe experiences at that time in high school stays with him into his adult life. So the popular people or the unpopular people just stay in this little bubble, and they get kind of typecast into this personality. It's For Kobe, it's something that he cannot escape, in that he has this typecast put on him as a loser. It's like a branding and marking that he has for his whole existence, since his whole time in Djinda, the place where he grows up. It's it's not, no, we don't have extended schooling. You should be I should be a bit clearer in that blurb, shouldn't
Well, I understand, but and it also says that he's on the verge of suicide.
I?
Now, one, and correct me where I go off track here, because it sounds like he's about ready to commit suicide, and then he has a mental break, is what it sounds like, because he starts hearing voices.
Mhm.
He hears an elf and a dwarf in his head, and then gets into a video game, a real life video game, before the high school bully comes after him, or his old high school bully comes after him.
Mhm.
What is it? Is he actually having a break, or I mean, what's going on in the story that starts us off where he's hearing an elf and a dwarf in his head and is in a video game?
um, it's it does kind of sound like a break. I would almost call it a breakthrough. Um, so Kobe is in Djinda, and for his whole entire life, he hears his own voice being called to him when he approaches technology. I recount a story in the opening chapter with Kobe around when he was 4. His grandmother bought the house a TV, and as he got closer to it, it started printing his name kind of in like matrix like letters, just like Kobe, 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 over and over and over again. And the closer he gets to it, the louder the voices become, until the technology explodes, because it cannot handle his proximity towards it. And so I recount on the day that he's going to kill himself, because he can't take it anymore. He can't take being in this place anymore. The people that hate him, the high school bully that constantly still tortures him, and the multiple encounters that he's had with technology through this town, of just completely obliterating anything that is technological. So going into the electronic store and just blowing up everything because he's in there. Um, Going past people walking on mobile phones and they explode in people's hands. He has this curse that he does not understand, and this constant feedback of hearing his own name in his head. And it's only until he gets to the library, which he's going to jump from the tallest bridge in town into the river and drown himself. He only bypasses that by going to the library first to return a book from his grandmother, because he says that she'll still haunt him even though he's dead. Like she'll come and find him. So he's that terrified of her. So he's like, all right, I'll do this last thing. And as he approaches, he hears different voices. He hears people talking telepathically to each other inside the library, and he sees them, and it's an elf and a dwarf. And these two people are there, completely obscure to the kind of surroundings of this kind of small town, talking about this music festival. This music festival that has come to the town unbeknownst to Kobe. And he hears their conversation, and he hears them talking about this festival and why it's come to this place. And he gets spotted by one of the people who are organizers of the festival, and I call them Whiteheads, and they're the group of people who work for this philanthropist, crazy dude who is Abe Sue, who's basically the organizer of this music festival. They're kind of his little underlings. They spot Kobe and begin to talk, and the elf and the dwarf come outside because they see him talking to this woman, this whitehead, and the whitehead realizes that Kobe can hear what they're thinking because they're talking. Excuse me. In their heads.
Don't worry.
they're talking rude words about Kobe inside their heads, and he calls them out on it. The first time he kind of gets brave and says something, and through the whitehead being there, she's like, "How did you do that?" And so that sets off the chain of events for Kobe to get invited to go to the festival and then land into this place that's completely futuristic, set in his small town, and finds out that it's actually set up for him, and that now that it's on his 21st birthday, the wormhole, a connection through to this other planet, is now open, and that's where he originates from. And so this whole sequence of events starts to open up, and he drops into this realistic video game to discover who he truly is and where he comes from. I wanted to have it in such a way that the place and that starting point was just the possible worst existence that he could have, into opening up this other portal to this other world and completely flip it on its head to how he gets treated in this other world. So that's a small kind of spoilers of kind of where that's coming from.
So now, is he the only one that can see these whiteheads and the elf and dwarf, or kind of because you said he goes to the public library, these people are there. Can other people see these?
Yes.
All right, so they're visible to everybody else, but no one else thinks oddly of an elf and a dwarf, or do they just not realize they're an elf and a dwarf?
Other people realize, but they are aware of it. Kobe is so wrapped up in his own problems, and I mentioned it in this opening chapter, that he kind of skips past the advertisement for the festival that's in the local newspaper.
All right.
So the other people of the town know it's there. They know it's coming. You know, it's a massive revenue. This is a worldwide music festival that only pops up in certain countries at certain times. And so Kobe's so wrapped up in himself and the problems that he has, in that he's just not aware that there would suddenly be a descending of all these people into this place for people to come and appear. So the elf and the dwarf, yes, they are visible to other people as well as the whiteheads. So it's just to Kobe, his worldview is so narrow and so bleak that he just doesn't realize or doesn't think that this could happen to him.
All right. Now, where is this taking place? I'm assuming in Australia. Is it like your small town, a fictional small town? What is the location where it all starts off at?
It's kind of a fictitious small town that I kind of invented. I looked up the word Djinda means star, and I liked that, so I just kind of went, okay, it'll just be in X location of Australia, because a lot of small towns, remote towns worldwide kind of have the same problem, in that you're kind of in this little bubble of
isolation. Basically, you're shut off to the rest of the world. I know I grew up in a small town.
Not progressive. You know everyone. Nothing changes. People have the same jobs. People have the same ideas. Yeah, that kind of concept.
I understand. Like I said, I grew up in a small town where we used to have a flashing red light. Now it's gone. So, but
fancy.
Oh yeah, but yeah, I mean, I understand the small town concept and all that. It makes perfect sense to me because And it's a joke that I commonly make is I remember going swimming in a little quarry that was on private property, and by the time I got home, my ma already knew what I did because somebody called and said they saw it. So
Yep, that's spot on.
yeah, so I know the workings of everyone knows your name. Now I'm much in a much different area, but so with this, your character Kobe, is it Kobe or Toby?
Kobe.
Kobe, okay. So with Kobe, is he finding his world being dragged in against his will, or is he really going into this wholeheartedly and wanting the escape from his current world?
It's an interesting thing that I played with in that, and he says it when he's kind of on the precipice, on the refusal of the call aspect of it, in that he has a choice to escape his current reality and what he was going to do and kill himself, or
Mm-hmm.
he could go over here and escape in a different way. And so he kind of has this kind of bridge point of to go, well, we'll just see where this goes rather than escape my current reality. Maybe I can put my trust in these strangers, this elf and a dwarf who I've just met, and just see where this goes because they and the sequence of events is that the elf and the dwarf, need to get Kobe to the music festival. And so the Whitehead kind of in charges and trusts them with him to go, you two are responsible for getting Kobe to the festival. If you can get him there, then we can give you backstage passes, which is something that's highly coveted, to give them incentive to not let Kobe just wander off and do what he wants to do. Excuse me, I'm just going to drink.
Not a problem. So now, does is this a world that's parallel to ours where dwarfs and elves and all these people are commonplace? I guess that's really one question I have because it sounds like they're just average people within the society.
So they're just
But
they're just cosplaying. So they're
oh,
the music festival itself every year has a different theme, and so I mentioned it. One theme is like cops and robbers is one theme, and there's like robots is another theme. So every since the festival's been running for 21 years, they run a different theme, and this year's theme is fantasy.
okay. So they're regular people cosplaying then is what
Correct.
it comes. Okay. I was gonna say I was picturing real elf, real dwarf walking around and everyone just being completely fine with it. To
This is
me, that
the
just seems a little weird.
this is the the kind of the duality that I'm kind of playing with, in that you've got a fantasy kind of theme and
Hmm.
kind of structure of hero, elves, dwarves, dragons, those kind of things, but then sci-fi, in that there's futuristic technology, there's space travel, there's wormholes, and so I liked I like the juxtaposition of a fantasy theme music festival
Hmm.
put on top of kind of this futuristic kind of story that's being told across, multiple kind of time horizons, and fusion of kind of those two different things. But I think you've clearly called out I need to work a bit better in saying that they're cosplaying people and not actually elves and dwarves. But there's there's similarities of which to, because of the reading that I've done, and stuff that I've kind of consumed, that you can kind of you can tell a dwarf is kind of grumpy, right? It's kind of
Right.
generalizing. That's the kind of theme, and an elf is kind of a bit airy and a bit kind of off. You can play a little bit with that in that
Hmm.
space, of those kind of concepts, which I think is fun. So I like to play those off.
All right, which makes sense. Now, with this, it's you said it's a video game. Is it similar to any games that are out there that you kind of base this off of, or is it a game that you kind of thought of and said, that would be an interesting concept to a game.
Yeah, so I'm kind of hiding the fact that this alternate Earth is our future, in
Mm-hmm.
that it's a bridge to a world that we can possibly go to. What I liked about it, I guess one of the core themes about the game is that geometrically, and I'll get a little bit technical, but stay with me. A prism has six vertices. That's the points of which the triangle kind of join at each edge, right?
Right.
That's the name of the first book. It's Vertex 1. And so there's another point which is Vertex 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And those are the six books that we have. Of the game itself, the characters are tasked with going into the prism phase to retrieve an edge. Now, on a triangle prism, there's 5 phases, and these are the levels of the game that I've got. So in the first level, it's kind of easier, and then it gets kind of progressively harder. So as the stories go on, the game gets harder. These phases change, and also, lastly, on the triangle prism is the edges, and there's 9 edges to a triangular prism, and those are what the characters must go in and retrieve. The kind of your ancient artifacts, your lightsabers, your rings, whatever the kind of MacGuffins you want to insert here is
Mm-hmm.
what the characters must go in and get. And so that's kind of the core concept, is that we've got the 6 books, or the 6 vertexes, the phases of the game, of which they must go through and compete and try and win and retrieve them. They go in, retrieve them, and try and bring them back, and then the edges they must get as the game gets harder.
All right. Now, why is his old high school bully coming after to kill him? I mean, is it, I guess there's a two-part question here. One, why is he coming after to get him? And is it literally trying to kill him or just beat the snot out of him?
He's been doing the beating the snot out of him for quite some time. This is one of the fun things that I get to play around with, in that now we're raising the stakes a little bit. So of of the 9 edges that are within the game, within the confines of this book, we're sending 9 other people along with Kobe into this world. So the Prism phase is a game of which multiple people can compete. And in the story, what happens is, though we start with Kobe originally, when we go through the wormhole, we split Kobe, Ruby, and Solomon, who are the elf and the dwarf, into these different parts of this planet called Gaia. So Kobe goes to Lian Saroon, which is the underwater planet. Ruby goes to Imperial, which is the big fire city at the bottom, and Solomon goes over to Ryanheart, which is the windy city, and they all have their own individual characters, or individual experiences, I should say. What happens to his high school bully is he goes right into the heart of the planet, of which there's a giant grey storm cloud, this maelstrom. And what happens is people go crazy inside this maelstrom. People change, people morph. They kind of become these awful creatures, kind of Game of Thrones, kind of creeping, kind of death style. And so his high school bully actually comes through the portal with him. He gets selected as one of the 10 who come through. And so there's kind of this constant kind of antagonist through the stage, of which Kobe encounters him on his way to kill himself. He encounters him in the line-up to the festival. He encounters him in multiple stages leading up, and then, I won't spoil it, but because he's dropped into this place, he, in this other world, then starts to encounter Kobe in a different way. And now
All right.
because he's been in this maelstrom, he's stronger, he's more terrifying, and Kobe must kind of lift himself up from where he's been in his kind of relationship with this person to try and overcome what he now is.
All right. So you also have more books that are coming out with this series. Is Am I understanding it right that you already have it's a 6-book series?
6 books.
So do you already have all of it planned out so you have a idea of where you're going with it? I I was going to say 6 books, you have to kind of have a plan there somewhere.
Yeah, so when I first started writing, I began what I thought was the first book, but it actually turned out to be the fourth. And so I got through 3/4 of the way through, and because this kind of idea kind of kept growing, kind of
Right.
borrowing from all these different places, these cool concepts. I'm like, oh, I like that. Oh, I like that. It it sucked because I got 3/4 of the way through, and I'm like, damn, okay, I have to go back and start again. But the whole process kind of made me a better writer, and so I learning how to write and kind of having that kind of framework in place, I just I pantsed it to begin with, of which
Right.
I'm kind of all over the place and just kind of iterated upon that. And then doing more learning, I got the kind of blueprints of the hero's journey, kind of fundamentals as to kind of hit these different points. But the whole kind of series, I want to kind of bookend them in groups of 3, of which Kobe's story is 1 to 3, and then this
Hmm.
other character's story 4 to 6. Similar to how Star Wars have done it, in that you kind of follow different protagonists across those 3 kind of part blocks, in which it is all a connecting story, but you follow different characters and different things happen of where I want to take the whole world in 4, 5, and 6 is dramatically different to where 1, 2, and 3 will be, but it all kind of ties in. So because of this ever expanding kind of idea, I wanted to give it room to breathe, and so I've I've expanded out to 6 books.
All right. Sounds good. And trust me, I understand. I wrote, let's see here, for my 3 books, I wrote book 2, then book 1, then book 3. So
Nice.
I understand the going out of order, and it makes for an interesting time. But again, it makes for an interesting time. Like you said, you're a pantser. I do a lot of pantsing on how I write. I find it one entertaining, and you figure there's benefits and downsides to however you write. But as long as you get a good story out, which it sounds like you're actually doing from the reviews I've read on Amazon, and it sounds like people are enjoying the story. What what do you find that you think people are really drawing them into your story?
I think, and this will sound somewhat arrogant, but it's the best way that I can describe it. Sci-fi can be too technical,
Mm-hmm.
and fantasy can be too boring.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of need to have that sweet spot in between, of which you're not overwhelming people with kind of technicalities of how the rocket propulsion system will work and how this moon's gravitational, affects the weather on X and Y, or the long-winded description of the environment, or of what's going on over here, as well as this character's 200-page backstory. It's like
Right.
just get to the point. Like just get to the point. That's the reading a lot of different books, and watching lots of different movies, and playing games. It was what I was looking for didn't exist, or at
All right.
least not in the concept of the realms that I was kind of looking for. And so I'm like, well, can't wait for someone to make this thing, so I have to do this. Like I have to, in my own way, make what I'm looking for. And so from kind of borrowing from kind of those different places, I think that's the people who are reading it kind of resonating with it, because it's like it's moving, like where the theme style of when they actually get to this other world jumps from character to character. So you kind of got this Game of Thrones kind of style, Lord of the Rings style, of which a chapter is dedicated to a chapter and just their perspective of what they're going on. And it kind of leaves on a little cliffhanger, and then you jump to the next character, and you have to wait a little while until you get to come back to find out what happened to that character next, which makes for really good kind of page turning. And I love the idea of the different coloured worlds and the different things that happen within them, kind of tying all together, having their own kind of mini hero's journey of each of them to kind of progressively kind of push the story along. Because you may have read kind of Game of Thrones, and when you finish a Dany chapter, you like getting through the book because you're like, what happened to Dany? Like, I'm ready to what is going on? So that style is fun to propel the story along to tell what's going on. And I'll be doing a similar style as things progress in book 2 and 3 and 4 to introduce other colors as well. So you can kind of get a concept of, okay, secondary colors are purple, orange, and green, and I can drop them in with the red, blue, and yellow that I've already started with. So then our exploration of this place, of characters, of the story overall, of what's happening under the hood, can get more and more enriched. So I think that's why it resonates well, is because it's not super technical and it's not super nerdy. It's just that nice little sweet spot.
Well, that's a good thing. I know I've read a few books that are just so hard boiled to facts that, like you said, 200 pages of somebody's backstory, and you're sitting there going, "Where was the story?" Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've been there, and that takes the fun out of it. But again, it is nice to have a little bit of understanding of the characters, and
sure.
So don't get me wrong. I'm not saying no one should ever write a backstory or give people indication of the character, but just not 200 pages.
Yeah, I think there's ways to do it, right? There's ways that you can do it that keep it interesting.
Right.
In that you don't want to kind of info dump of all the characters' traits, but you can do it almost in passing or conversationally. Like there's ways to make it interesting for the reader.
Oh, I agree. So do you have a projection of your next book coming out yet, or is it still in process?
I have the way that I wrote my first book was utilizing lagging metrics and leading metrics. Instead, I said I wanted the book to be here by X date, so I needed to do so many words per day. I'm calculating out to have it completed by the end of this year, because if I take 21 years to write another book, by the time I finish book 6, I'll be 142. So I need to get a bit of a wiggle on. So I've got my planned daily writing of hitting my word count, which will get me the book by the end of the year. That's the plan.
All right, nice. So people can have something to look forward to after they finish your first book, which is always good to have. Because I know once you start a series, you're sitting there going, okay, you don't want it, speaking of Game of Thrones, being God knows how many years before the final book actually comes out.
Yeah. Is he still going? Is he still alive? Hopefully he's still okay. I don't know.
I think he's still kicking.
Oh, good.
But yeah, I mean, so yeah, that sounds good. Now, with that, is there anything really people should know about your book before they jump into it? Because it sounds like it starts off on a downer kind of feel, and then it takes off. And I'm hoping from what it sounds like, the descriptions and everything you've told me so far, the book actually picks up, gets in a better mood, gets everything more exciting and heart pumping, where it's not woe is me, but more, oh criminy, I need to try to survive.
Yeah, it's I got my dad to review it, who's also a fantasy lover, and he said after a somewhat dark start, the story gets going. I'm like, okay, I should use that as a blurb. I think the darker you can place a character in like they call it the glass shard of like something kind of wrong with their existence, the worse that you can kind of make it for them, the bigger the payoff. So
Hmm.
it's it's something that certainly from and the intro that I have of the story is kind of a nice hook to kind of get you in, of which it talks about of the, and this is before we introduce Kobe. There's this kind of chapter of 1982, the first time that they're going into the wormhole, and it tells the perspective of what the spaceship sees as it goes through, and the spoiler at the end is that it gets eaten by a giant spider dragon and cuts to black. So it's kind of like a nice little hook of like, okay, what is going on?
Right.
And so you want to kind of get back to what happened there, because if I'd started the whole book with, he's a horribly depressed, overweight character who's on his way to kill himself, you're like, this isn't a fun book. Like,
Right.
why am I reading this? This is awful.
Yeah, that's
Um,
kind of where I was kind of sitting there going, wow, it sounds depressing to start with.
it's it's purposeful in that you set the odds and set the cards stacked against this character as much as possible, and it's like
Hmm.
there's no way this person can be the hero. Like there's no way. Like look at it. Like there's all these things that are working against them. Um, that's the fun aspect of it. So certainly for those who have kind of like the Star Wars or kind of the Game of Thrones style, it's certainly for what I feel is resonating well for that kind of audience to kind of pick up, because it tells that similar kind of you couldn't possibly be the hero kind of style, in that it's the it's kind of the Brandon Stark, the Luke Skywalker, the lowly kind of hero. It's like, no, it's not you. Like you couldn't be the one. And it's that awesome arc of who they could become across that journey that I think is captivating. And as well as that, if you don't like Kobe, there's Ruby and there's Solomon as well, and soon others to kind of play with, because I think that's what makes it more fun, is you get to kind of play with different protagonists and how they would react, rather than, and singular focus can work um, if that's the style, and many have done it. But I love, yeah, because I'm trying to cover so much ground with so many different colors, I needed to have different characters to kind of play with. So I personally biased. I think that other people can, or certainly those of the sci-fi and kind of fantasy ilk, can like it. And I've even had people who haven't normally consumed this content before enjoy it. So I've got a free chapter that you can get if you want to dabble in it, and then you can go, yeah, that's cool, or no, that's not for me, and then you'll know.
All right. Well, since you mentioned that, so I know that people can find you on authorblurb.com, where I have a profile set up for you. I imagine your website, which would you like to tell people what it is? It's going to be in the show notes, but is that where your free chapter is going to be?
Yeah, so if you go to the prismhexology.com, you can download, chuck in your email, and I'll send you the first free chapter for the book, and you can try before you buy.
There you go. A little taste before you get hooked.
Yeah, see what you like it. If this is for you, cool. If it's not, then that's fine. This is the I'd certainly want to make sure it's fitting people's what they're interested in, and what I'm kind of doing with like the social aspect as well is kind of playing around with it to try and get it into kind of different kind of cool formats to get people to find out more about it, and yeah, just find like-minded people who resonate with it and think it's cool.
Well, it sounds good. I know that it sounds interesting, so that's one I'll probably have to add to my list eventually. And I had said, with all the authors I've been talking to, my list has grown from just a couple books to I could probably double my book collection at this point. But with that being said, I appreciate you being here, Alex. It's been fun talking with you. Hopefully, at the end of the year, when you're about ready to put out your next book, you come back so we can talk more
Definitely.
about that. And with that being said, this is going to be the end for everybody else. But if you could, hold on for me just for a moment. So thank you for making it this far. Remember, you can go to authorblurb.com where there's plenty of stuff there for you to find. Enjoy another author. Enjoy finding that book that you love. So take the time, do me a favor, share, subscribe, enjoy the show, and tell others. Thank you.